Hello, I'm Sandra Sully. Welcome to 10's Late News. Threats and fury as a real-life Underbelly star tries a secret escape.
I mean, get going. Don't ever come to my place, you.
Voodoo claims, the bizarre allegations about an anger management MP and what she keeps in her freezer.
I'm sure she's not only got me in the freezer but in an ice block at the moment.
The billion-dollar horse flu bungle laying the blame.
Inadequacies and breakdowns, an impenetrable maze of bureaucratic confusion.
Electric diet, the weight loss device that shocks away hunger.
So I would eat and I never get that full feeling.
Then the return of Sydney forward Barry Hall. Headline Sports tonight with Brad McEwen.
Sandra, it's been 7 weeks since Hall clocked Brent Staker. Now he's back and he says he's a changed man.
Oh, that was a shocker. Well, he's let himself down completely there, Barry Hall.
People, they call me a thug and all that sort of stuff, which is fine because it was a thuggish thing to do. But I certainly, from here on in, I want to be known as a footballer, not as a thug.
And it's official, Jim Stynes is Melbourne's new chairman.
I would like the Melbourne supporters to once again feel proud.
But first tonight, the threats and secret escape involving the girlfriend of accused Melbourne killer Tony Mokbel. Danielle Maguire has slipped back into Australia. Federal police confirming that they helped her hide from the media.
A car leaves from the home of Danielle Maguire's mother, hiding beneath a pair of jeans in the passenger seat, Tony Mokbel's girlfriend. Racing to a house around the corner, its occupant far from happy with the media glare.
Get going. I mean, get going. Don't ever come to my place, you. You got no right.
The man threatening a photographer.
Now go.
We'll only
go! I said go.
You don't want an assault charge.
Get going.
Okay.
All right, I'll let something out, matey. You better go. I've got a surprise.
Before Danielle Maguire was again swiftly driven from the house. Earlier, the partner of one-time fugitive Tony Mokbel slipped into Melbourne from Greece. Federal police confirming they helped her through a side door to avoid the waiting media. Adding to the intrigue, these pictures surfacing on the internet, initially purporting to show her arrival. The website later posing the question, was this a media decoy? Danielle Maguire stood by Tony Mokbel in Athens, the couple having a child in Greece. Last week, a number of people were arrested over Mokbel's $1 million escape from Melbourne. The elaborate plan seeing him hidden in a house in Bonnie Doon, north of Melbourne, a yacht bought in Sydney and trucked to Western Australia, where it's alleged Mokbel boarded and fled to Athens. Mokbel was extradited back to Australia last month. He remains behind bars in maximum security Barwon Prison. Alan Rascal, 10 News.
Police have finally started investigating the nightclub dispute that's forced federal MP Belinda Neal into anger management. Political opponents have been stepping up their attacks, now claiming that she keeps a list of hated colleagues in her freezer.
New South Wales Education Minister John Della Bosca is being hounded on every front. Teachers want more pay, and his political rivals want the actions of his wife, federal MP Belinda Neal, explained.
Look, I've said I'm not going to add anything to the distressing muckraking that's been going on today.
The latest revelations in nearly a week's worth of bad publicity for the power-broking pair are claims by neighbours that the police have been called to their home to deal with domestic disturbances. Miss Neal is also accused of keeping names and photographs of enemies in her freezer.
The proposal to engage in counselling was one that I fully supported.
Last month, pregnant federal Liberal MP Sophie Mirabella was abused by Miss Neal with the phrase, "Your baby will be turned into a demon by evil thoughts."
I'm sure she's not only got me in the freezer but in an ice block at the moment.
And she says the Labor MP, who hasn't apologised for her abuse, misled Parliament.
Someone who's a bit of a bully and a thug and not very nice.
Police today started an investigation into the conflicting accounts of alleged threatening behaviour by the backbencher and her husband at a club last Friday. Local police won't have to travel too far to talk to key players. Iguana Joe's nightclub is literally 200 metres just over the hill. Belinda Neal's office is only 100 metres back down that way.
If anybody has information as to a criminal offence that has occurred, I would ask them and take this opportunity to say, please come forward.
The maximum penalty for a false statement is 5 years jail. The police investigation will take several weeks. Kevin Wild, 10 News.
The boss of the quarantine service has stood aside tonight after a damning report on the billion-dollar horse flu disaster. It basically found that the industry suffered its worst ever crisis because somebody didn't wash properly.
Equine influenza shut down racing in Queensland and New South Wales for 3 months, costing the industry more than $1 billion. Now an inquiry has found Australia's quarantine inspection service is to blame.
Systemic failures, understaffed, not adequately funded and resourced, inadequacies and breakdowns, an impenetrable maze of bureaucratic confusion.
Federal Agriculture Minister Tony Burke delivered the scathing report, which was compiled after 44 days of hearings. It found the disease entered Australia in infected horses from Japan.
Inadequacies and breakdowns in the practices and procedures relating to the importation and quarantining of horses.
Quarantine officers then failed to stop it spreading through poor decontamination procedures at Eastern Creek in Sydney.
The evidence does not enable me to make a precise finding as to how equine influenza escaped into the general horse population.
The report recommends tighter controls on horse importation, with blood samples to be taken as part of quarantine.
Got all that in place, just got to make sure that all the protocols are followed now so we never have this EI threat again.
The federal government has announced it will foot the bill for the $108 million to eradicate horse flu.
We'll change everything forever, which will be for the better.
I think it's a positive. It's something that's had to be looked into because we don't want it again, that's for sure.
Lisa Rolls, 10 News.
Bank penalty fees are being blamed for pushing struggling families over the edge, but help could soon be on the way with a plan to limit how much we get slugged.
They hit when you least expect it, bank penalty fees that add up to hundreds of millions each year. But with family budgets squeezed tighter than ever, welfare groups warn they're hitting those who can least afford it.
In some cases, it is in fact pushing people right over the edge. We believe that there is no place for banks or financial institutions to be involved in punishing the poor in a country such as ours.
Penalty fees as high as $50 are charged for overdrawing on a credit card, for not having enough in your account or bouncing a cheque. A Senate committee is taking submissions for a bill put forward by Senator Steve Fielding, which aims to regulate how much banks can slug consumers.
It's outrageous to think that in Australia we're allowing banks to make such huge profits but at the same time gouge customers with horrendous bank penalty fees.
Choice accuses the banks of using these fees as another form of revenue.
Many banks still charge fees up to $50 for a single incident, and we believe that that's far in excess of the costs that they actually incur.
Of course, banks themselves reject any notion that these fees should be capped or regulated, arguing that to do so may in fact harm customers because it would force institutions to seek income from other sources or even lift their lending interest rates.
In fact, what's already happening is the market is working, and there is clear evidence that banks are now offering exception fee-free accounts and reducing the level of some of those fees.
The Senate committee will report to Parliament in the next few weeks. Eddie Meyer, 10 News.
There could soon be a new weapon in the battle against the bulge. Researchers in the United States are trialling a device that uses a tiny jolt of electricity to stop hunger.
It resembles a pacemaker, but instead of regulating the heart, researchers say it can control hunger and help obese people lose weight. Jeff Collins believes it helped him drop 10 kilograms.
I never get full, so I would eat and eat and eat, and I never get that full feeling.
Jeff sought medical help when his weight ballooned to more than 150 kilos. As part of a study, he was fitted with the experimental device called V-Block.
Like, I go to McDonald's and get a number 2 supersize and be able to finish the whole thing, and after my surgery, I can't finish the whole thing.
The V stands for vagus, a nerve which carries messages between the stomach and the brain. The device interrupts the signals between the two organs by emitting electrical impulses via 2 leads wrapped around the nerve.
The vagus nerve is very much involved with appetite, the feeling of fullness, and eating.
Gastric bypass and lap band surgery are the most common surgical treatments for obesity. But doctors say patients who've already had V-Block implanted have experienced fewer complications.
And patients who have had this have been eating less than they would of their normal portion and thus losing weight.
As part of the study, 300 people will have the device fitted, but only half of them will have it turned on, so doctors can determine if the electrical pulse really does suppress appetite. The results will be released by the end of the year. In the United States, Nicole Strawn, 10 News.
After the break, walk-in Botox bars.
Get your nails done or get your pedicure or your hair done. Come in and get some injectables done with your friends.
The latest so-called boost to a busy day. You're watching 10's Late News. The Dalai Lama has offered some free advice to Australians on how to achieve happiness without chasing the almighty dollar. He's also hoping Tibetans will heed his plea not to demonstrate against the Olympics.
The 15th Dalai Lama delivered his Tibetan Buddhist teachings today to eager devotees who are spending between $90 and $160 a day for the privilege. He's under high security because of the unrest in his homeland, but Dalai Lama called on his followers to exercise restraint.
Over a billion Chinese brothers sisters really feel proud of it. We must respect that. Therefore, we should not disturb that.
Talks with China over the recent violence in Tibet, which were due to begin yesterday, have been postponed. The Dalai Lama says if they resume next month, he has a simple message for the Chinese.
Give Tibetan meaningful autonomy. That will satisfy Tibetan.
The 72-year-old says the row over whether he meets Prime Minister Kevin Rudd is of little concern because this visit isn't political, it's spiritual. And on that theme, he offered this advice to Australians.
Happiness or successful life not entirely depend on money or external means, but within ourselves. The real potential is here.
It's a message that's given inspiration to his followers.
It's inspiring because it shows what's possible for a human being to attain in terms of positive qualities.
John Hill, 10 News.
The whale war with Japan has been pushed aside as the Prime Minister patches up Australia's relations with Tokyo. But Kevin Rudd's efforts might prove a political waste of time.
Finally, it's happened. Kevin Rudd gets to meet his embattled Japanese counterpart, and it looked like a reunion of old friends. Mr. Rudd thanked Mr. Fukuda for the warm welcome he's received, and Mr. Fukuda told Mr. Rudd he was greatly impressed by his visit to Hiroshima and the proposed Nuclear Disarmament Commission. Cooperation was the name of the day on everything except...
On whaling, by the way, we agreed that we shall engage in cool-headed discussions so that differences in our positions over this issue will not undermine the good bilateral relations.
We've also agreed that this disagreement should not undermine in any way the strength and positive nature of our overall bilateral relationship.
Mr. Fukuda comes to the talks politically weakened. Last night, in an historic vote, the upper house passed a no-confidence motion in him. While his party has a big majority in the lower house, it's doubtful the Prime Minister can survive. His approval in the polls is below 20%. That didn't stop Kevin Rudd inviting him to Australia next year.
I look forward to having a barbecue at the Prime Minister's Lodge in Canberra and throwing some Aussie beef on the barbecue for you.
Kevin Rudd now heads for Indonesia, confident the relationship with Japan is back on an even keel and that whaling will remain the elephant in the room both sides mostly ignore. In Tokyo, Paul Bongiorno, 10 News.
Some bad news on employment could turn out to be good news for mortgage holders. With all the details, ComSec's Tom Petrovsky. Tom?
Well, Sandra, for the time being, it's a safe bet that interest rates are going nowhere. The reason being that over the last 19 months, investors, politicians and, importantly, the Reserve Bank have become accustomed to jobs growth that's often been surprisingly strong. Figures released today said that there were almost 20,000 fewer jobs in the economy over the month of May. Importantly, the decisions by employers to employ fewer people were made about 6 months ago. So the key for interest rates lies in whether or not we're going to see a trend of weaker